This is Marta Helena Skowronska, known to history by the famous name Catherine I, the first woman ever to rule the Russian Empire. You would assume she was born inside a palace. The truth is the exact opposite. She came from a poor Baltic family, orphaned young, a house servant, a washerwoman who could not read. Then, at 17, a prisoner of war, carried off when Russian troops stormed her town. Anyone would think that was the end of her, but no. A Tsar fell in love with her. Peter the Great married a captive laundress and crowned her Empress with his own hands. This story is true. Over 150 of his love letters to her still survive. Her story begins far from any throne, in the Baltic lands that today border Russia, a region of farms, mud, and long, hard winters. Her name then was Marta, the daughter of a poor Catholic farmer. Historians still argue over the exact town where she was born. No portrait marked her arrival, no royal register. She entered the world unrecorded, a child no one expected to matter. Both her parents died when she was young. Plague, some say. She was taken into the household of a Lutheran pastor named Gluck. There she worked. She cleaned. She washed the linen. A servant girl among many, with no claim to anything. She never learned to read or write. She could speak several tongues, but she could not sign her own name. Now turn to the other end of that world, to a giant of a man, nearly 7 feet tall, Peter the Great, Tsar of all Russia. He was dragging a vast medieval empire into the modern world by sheer force, building a navy, reforming an army, and raising a brand new capital out of a frozen swamp. He called it St. Petersburg, a Tsar who bowed to no one. Between them lay the widest gap a human life can hold. He was an emperor, she was a servant, almost property. He commanded millions. She owned nothing, not even her own name. They should never have met. But history was already moving toward them both. In 1700, Russia and Sweden went to war, the Great Northern War. For 21 years, armies marched across these Baltic lands, and the town where Marta served lay directly in their path. War does not ask the poor for their permission. It simply arrives, and it takes. At 17, Marta married a Swedish soldier stationed in the town, a dragoon, the records call him. They had only days together. Then his regiment marched away to the fighting. She never saw him again. The record simply loses him. Her first marriage vanished into the war, and the war was coming for her too. In the summer of 1702, Russian troops stormed her town of Marienburg. The garrison fell, and the people inside became the spoils of war. Marta was seized, handed up the chain of command. A field marshal took her, then passed her on. From that day, she belonged to other men, a prisoner of war. So here she stood, a captive in a foreign army. No family, no freedom, no future that anyone could see. And far ahead of her, in a half-built palace, sat the most powerful man in the empire. 2 worlds, still a whole universe apart, but the distance was about to close. Her captor passed her to a new master, Alexander Menshikov, once a boy who sold pies in the street. Now the closest friend and right hand of the Tsar. In his house, Marta was set to work once more. But this house was different from the others, because the Tsar himself came here to visit, and in 1703, he did. It was 1703. Peter arrived at Menshikov's table for the evening, and there, waiting on the guests, was the captive from Marienburg. We do not know what words passed between them. The record keeps that silence. We only know what followed. That night, the Tsar noticed her, and the whole course of an empire quietly began to bend. What did he see in her? Not noble blood. She had none of that, and she never pretended otherwise. Those who knew her described a woman who was warm, steady, quick to laugh, unafraid of his terrible temper. Where grown men trembled before Peter, she could calm him. That, far more than beauty, was her power. Soon, she converted to the Russian Orthodox faith, and she took a new name. Catherine Alexeyevna. The servant girl called Marta was gone. In her place stood a woman remaking herself, step by step, language by language, at the side of a Tsar. This was no passing fancy of a powerful man. Catherine became the center of Peter's private world. She followed him on campaign. She slept in tents beside his marching army. She began to bear his children. In a court with every reason to despise her, she refused to leave his side, and he refused to send her away. He had a court full of princes, generals, noble women of ancient blood. And yet the one person he could not do without was a captive laundress from a fallen town. In 1707, they did something almost unthinkable. Quietly, in secret, Peter married her. No grand ceremony, no announcement to the courts of Europe, just a private vow. Between a Tsar and the woman the world still called his mistress, on paper, she was nobody. To him, she was already his wife. 2 small daughters arrived and survived, Anna in 1708, Elizabeth in 1709. Of the many children Catherine bore, only these 2 would live to grow up. Grief shadowed the happiness. Yet one of them, Elizabeth, would one day rule Russia herself. The captive's blood was entering the royal line. But Russia was not ready for a laundress at the Tsar's side. The old nobility was appalled. To them, Catherine was a foreigner, a commoner, a prize of war with no name and no bloodline. That such a woman might rise beside the throne felt, to them, like an insult to the crown itself. The whispers never stopped. Behind her back, they called her low-born, illiterate, unfit. Some hinted darker things, that she was a witch, that she had bound the Tsar by some spell. How else, they asked, could a captive servant hold an emperor's heart for so many years? And her position was far more fragile than it looked. She had no legal standing, no powerful family behind her. If Peter ever tired of her, or if he died, she could be cast out in a single day. Back to nothing. Everything she had won rested on the will of one unpredictable man. Then came the trial that would change everything. In 1711, Peter marched south against the Ottoman Empire, to the river Pruth, in what is today Moldova and Romania, and Catherine went with him. Pregnant, riding into a campaign that was about to become a catastrophe. The Russian army marched straight into a trap, surrounded against the river by a far larger Ottoman force. No food, no way out. Peter the Great, the unstoppable Tsar, now faced total destruction. It looked like the end of the army, of the reign, of everything he had built. Here, legend takes over from fact. The story goes that Catherine gathered up all her jewels, and the jewels of every other woman in the camp, and used them to bribe the enemy commander into peace. Voltaire himself later repeated this tale, but most historians now doubt the bribe ever happened. So we set the legend aside. What is certain is simpler, and in a way, truer. When the Tsar's whole world was collapsing, Catherine did not run. She stayed, calm, in the heart of the disaster. Somehow, the army escaped the trap. A treaty was signed. The Tsar and his men rode home alive. And Peter never forgot how she had stood by him when everything hung by a single thread. In 1713, he created a new honor, the Order of St. Catherine, named for her alone. For Peter, a decision was quietly hardening. This woman had followed him into the fire itself. She had earned something no noble bloodline could ever grant, loyalty tested by disaster. And so he resolved to do what no Tsar before him had dared, to raise a captive up before all the world. First came the wedding the whole world could see, in February 1712 in St. Petersburg. Peter and Catherine married in public, openly, officially, in a church before the court. The Tsar of all Russia took a captive laundress as his lawful wife, and dared anyone to object. Think of what that moment meant. A woman once seized as the spoils of war, now standing at the altar, as the lawful wife of an emperor. But Peter was not finished. A wife, even a Tsar's wife, could still one day be set aside. He wanted her place to be beyond question. He wanted an actual crown upon her head. So in 1724, he did the thing that truly shattered the divide. He would crown Catherine Empress himself. In the ancient heart of Moscow, in the Dormition Cathedral, where Tsars had always been crowned, Peter lifted a glittering imperial crown in his own two hands and set it upon the head of a woman born a peasant, a captive, a washerwoman. It was the first time in all of Russian history that an empress was crowned, ever. Let that image land. The most powerful man in Russia, placing the crown with his own hands on a prisoner of war he had chosen to love. It was a message to the whole empire and to every noble who had ever sneered at her. This woman is not beneath me. She is my equal, my partner, my empress. And no lineage, no custom, no whisper at court can ever stand against it now. Yet even here, the truth stays human, not a fairy tale. Months later, a scandal struck the palace. Catherine's secretary, William Mons, was arrested, officially for corruption. Rumor whispered of an affair, but no proof of any affair was ever found. Peter had the man executed, and for a time, the couple did not speak. But the anger cooled with time, and this is what matters most. Peter never undid what he had done. The crown stayed on her head. The empress remained an empress. Whatever passed between them in private, in the eyes of the law, her rise could no longer be reversed. Then, in the winter of 1725, Peter the Great fell gravely ill. The giant who had reshaped a whole empire was dying, and he had never clearly named his heir. The throne of all Russia hung open, and beside his bed stood a woman who had once been a prize of war. The great nobles had their own candidate, a young royal grandson. The old blood wanted the throne back in its rightful hands, so who would rule Russia now? But Catherine had something the noble families did not, the love of the army. The Guards' regiments adored her. She had marched with them, slept in their camps, shared their hunger and their defeats. When Peter died, those soldiers surrounded the palace, drums beating, and they declared for her. And so, it was done. In 1725, the captive from Marienburg became Catherine I, Empress and sovereign of all the Russias, the first woman ever to rule the empire in her own name. The servant who could not sign her name now held the largest country on earth in her hands. Through all of it, one thing survives to prove this love was real: his letters. Over 150 of them, from Peter to Catherine, still exist today. He wrote as no Tsar was meant to write to a servant. Tenderly, playfully, as an equal. In one note, he greeted her like this:
Katerinushka, my dear friend, good day to you. I hear you miss me. Well, I miss you too.
Read that again. Not a decree, not a command from a throne. Just a lonely man, master of millions, missing one single woman on a long campaign. The girl the world had thrown away had become the one person a Tsar could not live without. Her own reign would be short. Catherine ruled more by heart than by policy. Much of the real governing fell to Menshikov and her privy council. She had crossed every barrier on earth to reach that throne, but she would not sit upon it for long. In 1727, only 2 years after Peter, Catherine died. She was barely past 40. From a servant's cot to an emperor's crown, her whole impossible journey had taken one lifetime. She had lived almost every life a person can live: captive, mistress, wife, empress, ruler. But her story did not end in that room. Remember the daughter born in 1709, Elizabeth. In time, Elizabeth would seize the Russian throne herself and reign for 20 years. The captive's blood would rule from the Winter Palace long after Catherine herself was gone. So how do we know all this is true, and not just a beautiful fable? Because the proof sits in the record itself. The marriage is written in the church registers. The coronation of 1724 is set down in the annals of the Russian state. It happened. It was witnessed. The letters survive in the imperial archives, over 150 of them, in Peter's own restless hand. And the Order of St. Catherine, the honor he created in her name in 1713, was worn by the noblewomen of Russia for almost 200 years after. Her name carried on their gowns. And Catherine had opened a door that would not close. After her, Russia was ruled by women again and again. The 1700s became a century of Russian empresses, ending with another Catherine, Catherine the Great. And it had all begun with a captive who could not read, lifted onto a throne by love. We should be honest about what we cannot know. The exact village of her birth is lost to history. Some tales of her life were surely polished in the retelling. Legends grew around her. But the shape of it is beyond any doubt. Servant, captive, wife, empress. That much the documents hold. Why does it still matter 300 years later? Because her life is proof of something we half forget. That the walls between people, walls of birth, of rank, of law, are never quite as fixed as they pretend to be. Sometimes, love walks straight through them. A washerwoman who could not sign her own name, crowned Empress of all the Russias. And it is written down, in the registers, in the letters, every word of it true. We like to say that love conquers all. Her life says something quieter and harder. That love can open a door, but you still have to walk through it again and again. Through every closed room, every cold and sneering court, she did, and the record remembers her. History is full of these impossible loves, the ones that should never have happened, and somehow did. And every single one of them is true. Follow along, and we will tell you another.